Welcome to the Mix Experience. Today we have Andy.
Yes. Hello. Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. We're here. Andy wants to discuss the differences between living up north compared to living here in the south. Some of the things that he's learned that was is new, and anyway.
Yeah, so like I said, I've told you before, and everyone who's listening, I'm from New York. And when I say I'm from New York, people think, well, he's from the city and he's a city slicker and things like that. But it's upstate New York, so it's definitely very similar to what is around here, but the culture is much different. So there's a big, for example, language. When I first moved here, people down here in the south, they call things like a buggy, and I never heard of that. And I was like, well, what the heck's a buggy, And so, but it definitely was an adjustment, a culture shock for sure. Even now I still try to pick up on some of the things, that people talk about and try to kind of understand.
Well, and another thing in the south, everything's a drink, like a Coca-Cola, a Pepsi, or it's either a drink or a Coke. Right. It don't matter what brand it is.
Very true.
So,
and that was something too. It was like, well, up north we call it a soda, or some people call it a pop. But definitely around here, everything's a Coke. Hey, you want a Mountain Dew? Coke. So Pepsi, like you just said, Coke.
Yeah. So. And I've had chances to go to New York, but to the city, and I just never felt, I just never had the urge to go. And I wish I went now, but
right.
In hindsight, but it's just an experience. Some of that.
It's definitely something that is worth checking out if you're interested. I mean, I would not suggest living in New York City. I've been to New York City multiple times, but I definitely was happier living upstate and kind of out of the whole city traffic and foot traffic stuff. With that being said, though, it's still expensive to live in New York. It's much more expensive. Gas prices, insurance, groceries, everything you could think of is more expensive up there.
Yeah,
it's rough. Another thing too is like, it's little things like up north you can't have any plastic bags. Strange, strange thing to think about, but it was like they outlawed plastic bags, and that whole thing is like, wow. So that's one of the main reasons why I like it down here in the south.
Yeah, it's like, they want to dictate to you what you can do and what you can't.
Right.
And that's one reason why I really never had the thrill to live there. I mean, you go visit maybe. I mean, probably wouldn't be bad, but I've lived in the South all my life and grew up here, and it's just, I don't know. I can't. I mean, there's might be better places to live, but to me, that's where I called home.
Yeah.
So.
And like, I've obviously lived up there. I've lived down here, and I prefer down here. It's a big reason why I stay down here. It's just, the weather is another example of it's cold up there. There's a lot of snow, it's a different kind of cold. It's down here when it gets cold. It gets like bone chilling cold, but up there it's cold all the time. And that snow is really it sticks around all year. And that's frustrating.
Man, I just couldn't deal with that. It's just the snow all the time, and it's all every time you go outside. I mean, here we get 3 days of snow, and it's like the end of the world, to most people, because they never had to deal with that. But
I know, a couple inches of snow and school shuts down for a week, and that's something I never really, until I moved here, I didn't realize that, because it takes at least 2, 3, 4 feet of snow before they even shut school down up there. But they're used to handling it a little better. Down here there's not as many snow plows and things like that. So, but I definitely don't miss it. That's for sure.
Well, I'm sure it has some great points, right? Good points to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for example, people up there, and this is just, again, I grew up there, and I'm still even like do it this way, but like I don't want to say they stay in their lane, but they're not as friendly. They're more just like go, and down here in the south there's a lot more interaction, which some people, they may enjoy that. I personally grew up knowing that, hey, when you go to the grocery store, you kind of get in and get out, and you don't really even if you see somebody, you know, it might be a quick hello, but it's not down here. There's much more. Southern hospitality is very real down here,
Yeah.
which I do appreciate that and I do like it. Sometimes too, for me personally, it's like I'm just trying to get to where I'm going and go, and I don't have the time for a long conversation like people do here in the South. But if that's what I'm used to, you know, it's different. So, but that's one thing that I like about up there. You know, it's another thing too would be, you know, I guess if you like traffic and being around people, and you know, it's a lot more, I guess, people to be around, you know, which can be, again, nice for those who enjoy company. As far as like seeing somebody on the streets, you always know there's somebody there. You know, in New York City, it's a city that never sleeps for a reason, you know.
Well, to me, it sounds like you're talking about like a community. You know, if you a community of people that, you know, some people need that where, you know, they need that reliability of somebody that can help them or something like that.
Right. Yeah. And down here, again, everybody's much more friendlier in a way than they are up north. And to most people that seems appealing, but there's people out there who, you know, and I'm kind of in between, but there's people out there who would rather people just kind of mind their own and not start, you know, getting conversations or talking and to somebody. And again, it depends on the person really.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's another, I guess, benefit for being up there, you know. And if you like city noise, traffic, cars, you know, I mean, that's another reason to go up there as well.
Yeah, and too, like, you know, I can sort of relate because I spent a lot of time in Atlanta.
Right.
You know, and it's a big city too, not as big as New York, but
right.
it has all the traffic and all the whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I grew up in the country in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And there was nothing around, and that's what I was growing up. We were just country, and but once I spent so much time down there, I got that city life in my system.
Right. Yeah.
And when I moved back to the country, it was, I about freaked out. I was like, you know, because everything, you got everything right there, you know, close by, and stores stay open later, and you know, and there's just something going on all the time, and then coming back to the country, and they roll up the carpets at 6 o'clock in the evening, 6:30, and you know these little stores close around 8 or 9 o'clock too. But it was just a lot for me to, you know, digest and get out and get it out of my system. So.
Right, and definitely, like, again, I did grow up in upstate, like I've said, but like and the city was about an hour south of where I lived, so it wasn't too far. However, if you're younger, especially, and you like that kind of that clubbing scene, that night scene, that bar scene, you know, things like that, that's all available pretty much all day, every day. You know, it's there's a lot of movement there and a lot of party scenes. You know, I mean, down here in the South, you know, when I first moved down here, the county I moved to, they didn't even sell liquor, they didn't even sell beer in a gas station. I never experienced something where we're up in New York, there's at least a bar in every corner, at least. So that was kind of a, you know, a culture shock too. And at the time, I really enjoyed drinking, so, you know, it was definitely difficult for me, who, you know, enjoyed a good drink, to go to a convenience store and they don't even sell alcohol, because I never heard of dry county and things like that. You know, but that's an advantage of living up there. If again, if you're younger, when you get to an age, you want to settle down. You don't really want that whole like loud scene.
No, I mean, especially if you have kids.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you got that's you know, you want to kind of get out of that kind of life, and you know, so. But yeah, just like I said, my experiences in Atlanta was, you know, it was similar to that, where, you know, there was bar after bar.
Yeah, Atlanta's very similar too.
You know, and
you know,
they call it hot Atlanta.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And so, but there's a lot of trouble to get into too.
Yeah, that's very true. And Atlanta and New York, definitely New York City, they're very similar in a way. You know, I definitely can see the correlation there. Is the laws are probably a little different as far as what you can get away with and what you can't do. When you're in a big city such as New York City, there's more police in certain areas. You know, there's more, but there's also more population too. So it's harder to kind of, you know, keep an eye on everything. That being said, though, they're very similar in a way.
Yeah.
But on another note, though, living down here in the South, the food y'all have is pretty good. And catch me there, I said y'all because I'm starting to pick up the lingo. But you guys have definitely a lot better food, than New York as far as like home cooking, things like that.
I say we have better food, but not better for you.
That's true. Yeah, I know. Well, I never heard of like the chicken waffles. That's a big thing down here in the South. Grits up there is just kind of like a microwave packet of water with some grits mix in it. There ain't nothing. And then the biscuits and gravy too is fantastic down here. So I will give credit to Southerners; they can cook. Yeah, they cook well.
And see, I think y'all have one of the biggest meals. One of the most popular meals up there is called shit on the shingle. Is that what they call it?
Yeah, shit on the shingle.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So.
First time I ever heard that, I was like, nope.
Right.
Who's gonna eat no shit on the shingle?
Now, I will say New York has better bagels and better pizza sometimes. It depends on where you go, of course. But definitely the bagels and the pizza is a little bit better than here in the South. But, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for the Southern food for sure.
Yeah. Sure.
I enjoy it down here. And it's cheaper down here. Groceries, everything you buy, even just like the mom and pop restaurants around here, cheaper, at least price wise, a little bit anyways.
Yeah, and too, we're in Georgia, so we're in the Bible Belt.
Yeah,
and that's where you up north you may be more dictated by the government and who runs the cities and stuff, but most towns here in the South, if you're in the Bible Belt, there's a lot of churches. There's a church on every street.
Yeah.
So, and nothing wrong with that. Don't.
And it's funny because there's a church on every street, but there's also a gun store on every street too.
Yeah.
Up in New York, there's not. Gun laws are much different. There's not gun stores every church and gun store down here. So.
Well, they say God's gun, God gun, and Gatorade. I think it's
right. So. I know. But it's definitely a lot. I prefer to live down here. I enjoy. It's grown on me. It's taken a couple years. It was definitely a culture shock, as I've said, and it definitely was a lot to learn as far as some of the culture and some of the. But it's not too much different than living up there. And the weather is my favorite. People always ask me, well, what do you love the most about the South? Well, the weather for sure. It's nice.
And Georgia's a good place to live because you get all 4 seasons. And you can also, like, we're in the mountains, the North Georgia mountains.
Yeah.
So, but a 7-hour drive, you can be at the beach.
Yeah.
Savannah. So it's the demographics of things and the way Georgia's laid out. It's a really cool state, I think.
Definitely is. And like I said, I enjoyed going to New York City one of the times I have, but I loved, like I said before, living up there. It looks like it does around here. Very rural, very, many trees and deer and all sorts of stuff too. Yeah. So I say I'm from New York, but that does not mean New York City per se, even though I have, spent time in New York City before. So.
Yeah. But, so, is Georgia and New York, is that the only 2 places you've lived?
Yes, it has been. So I did live, upstate New York, and then I moved here about 9 years ago. So I've been down here for a little while now. But it's definitely. I moved down here because my wife and her parents moved down here. So we all decided to move down here so she'd be closer to her family.
Yeah, that's usually the way it goes.
Yeah.
The man usually sacrifices.
That's what happened.
That's I had a friend. He was from Louisiana, and he lived here in Georgia, and I didn't even have to ask him. I said, it was a woman, wasn't it? He was like, yep.
I've heard that, but I'm glad we did. I know my wife, she's watching this. I'm glad we did. So yeah, and it's been great because it's just nicer down here overall.
Yeah.
And New York is the governor, the mayor, they're messing up that state, you know, in ways that, I mean, I get it, it's a liberal state, I get it that it's Democratic, but like there's just a lot that I don't agree with, you know, and I've changed my perspective since moving down here, you know, and I can see it, and times have changed too, and things like that, but I just don't like the way that the taxes are high, and like they're trying to do things that really should have, you know, better attention in other ways. You know, they should put more attention on other things than focusing on certain, you know, like agendas, I guess you could say.
And too, you know, I think you told me this a while back that in New Jersey you can't even pump your own gas.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
I never heard that.
That's crazy.
I mean, they used to do that years ago here in Georgia, you know, but it was like a service thing. It wasn't.
Right.
You couldn't do it, but you know, it was like.
Yeah, they have some law, which I'm not really sure the meaning behind it, but yeah, there's some law that doesn't, in New Jersey, they don't allow you to pump your own gas at a gas station, which, I mean, I think they're the last state to actually have that law still in place.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But I guess, I mean, that's just kind of, you know, I just want to kind of share some of my experience up in New York and, you know, anything like that, so, I really enjoy the South better, and, you know, I do say that the North did win the war, just for the record. But
damn it! You had to bring that up, didn't you?
Bring that up.
Like, let me put my hand up now.
but yeah, Southern hospitality is a big thing down here, and I really appreciate all that. People are friendlier down here, you know, and I really like that. It's an adjustment, but I've grown to love it. So
until you know, I think it freaks some people out when you know you just have a random person go, "How you doing?" You know,
it
or
does.
something, you know, and it's like, do you know me? Or you know, I mean, I could feel where that would probably freak me out if I was from somewhere where, you know, it just was uncommon for somebody just to be out, be nice and say hey or something.
Exactly, it was definitely different. And then I don't understand how everyone's always fixing to go somewhere. You're always fixing to do this.
We fixing to go over yonder.
Over yonder, yeah. I reckon.
This guy, I told him one time, I said, I forget, he was from up north or something, and I said, why don't you go over yonder? And he goes, kept looking at me like I was really weird, and I was like, what? And he was like, what's a yonder?
I was told it's pronounced yonder.
Yonder.
Over yonder. I don't know if that's true, but yeah.
And too, in the South, it's weird too how the accent, it's different, you know, in different states, you know, how, you know, they try to put Southerners all in one big bunch, you know, and, you know, like, if you go to Louisiana, they talk different because they got, you know, French influences and stuff, and
it's a different Southern drawl. It's all still Southern drawl from what I know, but it's definitely a little different. What you're saying, a little tone different.
But if you go anywhere in the South and you hear banjos, run.
I have heard that many times. Yeah, I believe it's from the movie. So, but yeah, well, like I said, I appreciate, you know, you having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming and
sharing some of my history with New York and things like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You sharing that. You know, that's some you know, some good insight on, because I've never been, and there's probably going to be a lot of people watch this that's never been. And,
it's definitely, I always say to people, like, it's a great place to visit, but a horrible place to live.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, if you want to do, you can do the whole tourism, Times Square, you know, George Washington Bridge type thing if you want to, and then kind of be on your way and never visit again. That's what I tell people anyways, but again, I did live out of the city, but things are still expensive from, you know, so I would highly recommend visiting New York if that's the kind of scene you want, but not necessarily. To live in Manhattan alone would be
Oh my goodness, that would be. You know,
so,
just to rent an apartment would be. And it's kind of like one of those things too. You gotta think, you know, what am I doing with my life?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like I'm just working to. You know what I'm doing, you know, type things. So
now if you get invested in all types of like stock market trading and make some real money, and you want to live in Manhattan, by all means. But it's definitely it's not for everyone, and I think the majority of people, probably listeners too, would maybe enjoy a trip, a vacation, whatever you want to call it. But you know, and I don't necessarily recommend again living in New York City, especially not, and even upstate New York too. it's like it is around here in Georgia, but expensive and cold.
Yeah.
Very cold. So.
Well, Andy, thanks for coming on the podcast, the Mix Experience, and
Well, thank you for having me.
we're glad you moved to the South and got out of the Devil's Den up there.
Devil's-
So,
yeah,
you know.
down here to the gunslinging Bible Belt.
your kids will thank you when they get older.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sure they will.
you know, well, I don't have to pay them high taxes. So,
All right.
but we'll do this again coming up pretty soon, and we'll have other topics to talk about, and you know, and have maybe some comical stuff and all that stuff too.
Sure.
So,
All right. Well, thank you.
yeah, thank y'all for tuning in, and catch us on Spotify and YouTube.